Bruce said that he had hit a girl with his car. He panicked, and he and some other people pushed her body into the car. They drove fast to the end of Snow Avenue near the highway, a lonely place. There they quickly put her down and covered her with big rocks. This is just one of the scary stories about what happened to Deanie Marie Peters. This mystery case followed Detective Ken Klein Hexel for 34 years. Like a ghost he chased until he died. Now, after almost 50 years, will the truth about Deanie Marie Peters finally be discovered? Or will her story stay a cold, scary mystery in Michigan? Before we start the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell to get the latest stories. The buzz of the old lights in Ken Klein Hexel's home office didn't help the deep quiet that had become part of his life as he got older. Dust floated in the single ray of afternoon sunlight over neat stacks of case files. Each file showed years spent trying to solve mysteries. His hand, marked with lines from long nights and lots of coffee, moved slowly across the page of his old journal. "This case," he wrote, his words a whisper in the silence, "this case has followed me for 34 years. It stuck to my detective badge like rust, then dug into my soul." The year was 2015, just 3 years before he died. The face of 14-year-old Deanie Marie Peters, bright and forever young in the old photos above his desk, still haunted his thoughts. Even after he retired from the Kent County Sheriff's Department in 1994, Klein Hexel refused to let go. The Deanie Peters disappearance wasn't just another cold case. It was a personal mission, a silent promise to a ghost. He became a private detective so he could keep looking for answers. It was his way of making up for the truth he hadn't found yet. The years had gone by, blending together into a stream of unsolved puzzles and brief hopes. But the mystery of Deanie stayed sharp and stubborn. Again and again his thoughts came back to Bruce Bunch, the angry teenager connected by events and dark rumors to Deanie's last days. So many people's stories, so many whispers had pointed toward Bruce: the mystery accident, the drunk confessions, the violent temper that marked his adult life. Was he the monster, the accidental killer, a victim of bad luck himself? Klein Hexel felt the weight of it all, the terrible not knowing that stuck to every part of the case. Now in his mid-70s, looking out at the quiet Michigan landscape, the sad truth settled over him. The Deanie Peters case would probably stay unsolved until his own death. The question of whether Bruce Bunch was truly guilty might never be answered for sure. A shadow of suspicion meant to follow him to the grave, or maybe already there. His hand reached for the thick, worn folder. He knew what was inside like his own face. He opened it, flipping past the first reports, the witness statements, the desperate pleas. And as he looked at the first official paper, his mind went back to that cold February afternoon, to the very beginning of the impossible emptiness. The afternoon sun, weak and pale on February 5, 1981, tried to warm the big brick building of Forest Hills Central Middle School in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Inside, the muffled grunts and shouts from the gym's wrestling practice made a sharp, almost wild contrast to the coming quiet of the rural Michigan evening. Dust floated in the bright lights, unaware of the change in the air, the invisible ripple of fate that was about to happen on what seemed like an ordinary Thursday. Here, in the middle of the noise, sat 14-year-old Deanie Marie Peters, an 8th grader with a lively sparkle in her brown eyes. Next to her were her mother, Mary, and a family friend. They were there to cheer on Deanie's 6-year-old brother, a small figure wrestling on the mats, unaware of the shadow growing in the corners of the big gym. Around 5 p.m., a restless energy seemed to stir in Deanie. She got up from her hard gym seat. Her attention moved away from the practice. With a casual wave and a quick, unconcerned statement, "I'll be right back," she turned toward the cafeteria exit. Arad Dean Herbert, a close family friend, watched her go, thinking the most logical reason: a quick trip to the bathroom. But 15 minutes stretched into 20, then 30. Each tick of the clock made the small worry grow into a cold, tight knot of concern. Mary Peters, her mother's instincts stirring, began to ask questions. Arad Dean's guesses dissolved into alarm. Deanie had not come back. The first searches were a flurry of more and more frantic looking. The bathroom area gave nothing. The cafeteria, now empty, was bare. Back in the gym, Deanie was nowhere to be seen. Outside, the early February twilight had begun to deepen, painting the snowy grounds in shades of gray and blue. But Deanie's bright young form was missing. No one knew where she was. The ordinary afternoon had turned into an impossible mystery, and a deep, chilling silence began to fall over the school halls as Mary Peters, her heart pounding with fear, desperately looked for help. In the frantic hours that followed, a familiar sense of dread settled over Ken Klein Hexel. Even then, as an experienced Kent County detective with over 10 years in law enforcement, he recognized the chilling pattern forming around Deanie's disappearance. Stepping into the emptiness left by the missing girl, Klein Hexel found himself immediately dealing with a puzzle. A witness interviewed in those frantic hours gave a tempting but frustratingly ordinary last look at Deanie. She had been seen by the back door of the school, walking casually side by side with an older girl, maybe 15 to 18 years old. They were talking, not arguing. There was no trouble, no cry for help. Just two young women lost in conversation, stepping into the fading light. This image, so normal, only made the mystery of her complete absence deeper. To some, Deanie had been a spirited, sometimes rebellious young woman. Her reputation hinted at a free spirit, a teenager testing limits. She smoked cigarettes, leading some to guess she might have slipped outside for a quick smoke. But no one had seen her anywhere outside. Sometimes she would even stay at friends' houses without permission, painting a picture of a girl who liked to defy expectations. These early descriptions, though well-meaning, sometimes clouded the first investigation. They subtly steered some toward the easier, more comfortable idea that she left on her own. But Deanie's life was more complicated than simple rebellion. Just 2 days before she disappeared, the undercurrents of teenage rivalry had erupted in a physical fight outside the school. A fight had broken out between Deanie and 2 or 3 other girls. The reason? A boy named Larry, who everyone called Guy. Deanie's boyfriend at the time. Threats had been exchanged, clear warnings for Deanie to stay away from him. One of the girls involved was Guy's own sister. It was a big enough incident that school officials had written it down. A terrible mistake meant that this important fight, which one of Deanie's best friends immediately reported to another detective, would stay hidden from the lead investigator, Detective Klein Hexel, in the early chaotic days of the hunt for Deanie. This silent early mistake would later cast a long shadow over the first part of the investigation. Deanie's home life also had its own problems. Her father, Dwayne Peters, lived in California, far from the quiet Michigan community. Friends remembered Deanie talking about the idea of running away to see him, a desperate wish for a connection, perhaps, or an escape from growing pressures at home. She had, after all, lived in California as a young child when her parents were still together. The relationship with her stepfather, according to first reports to Klein Hexel, was strained, marked by the classic clash of a teenager wanting to live like an older person and a stepfather who was kind of old-fashioned. Such familiar arguments were common, the detective said, but it added another believable but ultimately misleading idea to the runaway theory. However, the cold hard facts found in Deanie's quiet bedroom painted a very different picture. When Mary, her heart heavy with dread, searched her daughter's room, she found several $100s of Christmas money still tucked away, along with Deanie's entire closet of clothing, her jewelry, wallet, and purse. Nothing was packed. Nothing seemed ready for a trip. The scene spoke not of a planned departure, but of a life suddenly paused. Most importantly, Mary found Deanie's diary, a private record of a teenager's inner world, and immediately turned it over to the police. This personal journal, filled with Deanie's deepest thoughts and daily observations, would become a crucial piece of the puzzle. Despite lots of communication with authorities in California and with her father, no evidence ever appeared that Deanie had arrived there. Her father, a man burdened by distance and worry, confirmed she had never told him she was planning to come see him. The final letter he received from Deanie, written just weeks before she disappeared, was a touching reminder of a life full of youthful hopes. In her neat handwriting, Deanie poured out her love. "Dear Daddy, I miss you so. I just wish I could see you. I still haven't gotten your present, but maybe by the time you get this letter, I'll get it. Oh, Daddy, you're going to be so proud of me when I tell you how I'm doing in school. I got 2 B's and 1 A+ on my math test. Then I got 2 B's and 1 A on my science test. I have a big picture of me for you this year. I hope you like it. Well, Dad, how was your New Year? How was your Christmas? Mine was okay, I guess, but it brought back a lot of memories of you and my brothers and sisters," crying face. Well, almost the whole school knows about you and how great you are. My boyfriend wants to meet you. His name is Larry, but everybody calls him Guy. Well, Daddy, let's start keeping in touch better. I miss you so much. I just wish I could see you. Love, your daughter, Deanie. P.S. Take care of yourself, crying face. Miss you. The letter, a saved snapshot of her spirit, showed a girl doing well in school, proud of her B's and A+ in math, her A in science. It talked of missing her father, of a new boyfriend named Larry, and of wanting to start keeping in touch better. But nowhere in its lines was there a single word, a brief hint, of running away. This personal look into Deanie's heart cemented the growing belief among investigators and her family. This was no teenage rebellion. This was something far darker, something more scary than a girl simply wanting distance from her problems. The first theory that she was a runaway, though it used up precious early investigation time, began to fall apart, replaced by a chilling certainty that Deanie had not left on her own. The hunt for a missing girl changed into the grim search for a victim, and the focus of suspicion began to shift. As the snows of February melted into the slow thaw of March, a new figure came from the edge of the investigation, a familiar presence within the very walls from which Deanie had vanished. Arthur Dass, a 40-year-old janitor at Forest Hills Central Middle School, known to the students simply as Mr. Art, had been working that afternoon. He had been cleaning the office, he said, around 5 p.m. He said he never saw Deanie that day, but he knew who she was. A sharp kid, a good-looking gal, he told others, a happy-go-lucky kid. In the immediate chaos after Deanie's disappearance, he'd even joined Marie Peters in the frantic, useless search for her daughter, a seemingly kind, concerned helper, as leads dwindled in the immediate aftermath. And with Deanie having disappeared from within the school walls, investigators cast a wider net, focusing on anyone with unlimited access to the building. Arthur Dass, the school's janitor, with his close knowledge of the school's hidden corners and utility areas, naturally drew attention. The school also had a gas-fired incinerator, regularly used to burn papers and food scraps. In their desperation for any lead, police considered a horrifying possibility. Had Arthur, or perhaps someone else with access, somehow used this incinerator to get rid of Deanie's body? Investigators carefully checked the incinerator but found no evidence of it being used for such a terrible purpose. Further, they quickly learned a critical detail. The incinerator wasn't even hot enough to burn paper books well, making the cremation of a body completely impossible. This lead, terrifying as it was, dissolved into another dead end. Then, about a week after Deanie disappeared, Mary and her stepfather visited Mr. Art at the school, perhaps looking for comfort, perhaps hoping for some overlooked detail. He expressed his sadness about Deanie, and then told them a piece of information he said might be important. He had heard a banging on one of the school's locked doors during the wrestling event on the very night Deanie went missing. Standing at the door, he said, were 3 high school-aged boys. One clearly wearing a green and white Forest Hills Central jacket. He didn't recognize any of them, and had not let them into the school. He assured Mary that he had already told this story to the detectives. But subtly, chillingly, he added that police had not, to his knowledge, asked him for a description of the boys, nor had they shown him a photo lineup about this encounter. This detail, a potential missed opportunity in the frantic early days, hinted at other unexplored paths. About a month after Deanie's disappearance, the official interest in Mr. Art got much stronger. Police arrived at the school and arrested him. He spent a night in jail, a dark, confusing experience. His cellmate, a person placed by the police department who owed detectives a favor. Mr. Art, cautious and instinctively wary, suspected the man was an undercover cop and said little, claiming he had nothing to confess because he was innocent. The next day, he was taken before a grand jury. He faced accusations that he had kidnapped Deanie, even sold her somewhere far off in Chicago or Nevada. "You are nuts," he remembered thinking. "I've been here all this time." He hired a lawyer, a steep $1,600 cost for a man earning a janitor's pay. Police got a search warrant and carefully searched his property. Mr. Art watched the surreal invasion of his private life. The immediate aftermath of suspicion had damaging effects as the early investigation failed and Mr. Art's shadow began to fade. A new, more violent figure entered the growing web of suspicion. Bruce Bunch. He was a 17-year-old junior at Forest Hill Central High School at the time Deanie vanished. A young man connected by a cruel twist of fate to the very fight that had come before Deanie's disappearance. Bruce was reportedly the boyfriend of one of the girls Deanie had fought with just days before. The story that began to spread among the local gossip and eventually reached the ears of law enforcement was chilling in its casual cruelty. Bruce, the whispers claimed, had been in the parking lot outside the middle school that fateful evening. He spotted Deanie, perhaps stepping outside for a forbidden cigarette, a small act of defiance in the swirling snow. He decided, the story went, to give her a little scare. He drove his car toward her, a teenage prank on a dangerous night. But as he came at her, his car hit a patch of ice. Control was lost. The unthinkable happened. He accidentally ran her over, killing her. In a moment of panic, he then grabbed her body, perhaps throwing it into some nearby bushes, before coming back later under the cover of darkness to take her away and bury her in some secret, silent grave. Bruce himself fueled the strange story with his own admissions. He had dreamed of Deanie, he told many people, recounting vivid nightmares of the missing girl. "When I was a kid, I used to have this mental telepathy thing," he told a friend. "I could tell things like when a bird comes into your house and tells you someone's going to die. This dark superstition, where a bird flying into a home signals coming doom, especially for a woman, added an unsettling layer to Bruce's already troubled character, painting him as a young man deeply tangled in the shadows of premonition and guilt. The whispers and Bruce's own strange admissions were enough for Klein Hexel to bring the 17-year-old in for questioning. The detective, used to exploring the dark corners of the human mind, pressed Bruce on the rumors, the accident theory, and his unsettling dreams. Bruce, however, stayed outwardly calm. Providing an alibi for the evening Deanie disappeared. He stated that the stories linking him to Deanie's death were completely made up, just gossip fueled by his troubled reputation. Klein Hexel, though sensing an undercurrent of something deeply unsettling, could find no real evidence to contradict Bruce's account. He knew that if Deanie's body were never found, Bruce could not be formally charged or even officially named a main suspect. It was a familiar, impossible wall that rose so often in cold cases, a stark reminder that suspicion alone, however convincing, was not justice. As the years blurred into a relentless stream, Deanie's name, however, refused to be forgotten. Marie Peters, Deanie's mother, waged her own tireless campaign against the growing silence. Mary organized vigils, her voice a raw, unwavering plea whenever a local news channel would listen, her hands distributing flyers showing Deanie's youthful smile. She worked to stir memories in a community that seemed to move on, to keep the spotlight on the emptiness her daughter had left. Every birthday, every holiday, the Peters family would make fresh appeals, desperate attempts to awaken a conscience, to find the single piece of information that might break the decades-long case. Klein Hexel understood the deep need for her crusade, a mother's fierce refusal to accept the unacceptable, an emotional counterpoint to the official stillness that often settled over unsolved mysteries. The passing seasons, however, brought no answers. Only the slow, unstoppable march of time. The schoolyard changed, memories faded, and the initial shock dulled into a dull ache for many. Yet the file on Deanie Peters, however thin, never truly closed in Klein Hexel's mind. And then in 1989, from the most unexpected corner, a new chilling whisper emerged from the waters of the Flat River, suddenly stirring the long-sleeping investigation into fresh, desperate activity. A woman enjoying a day of canoeing and drinking on the Flat River told a disturbing conversation. A man in her canoe, whose name she later gave to police, confessed that he, along with 2 other people, had hit a girl named Deanie with a car in a school parking lot. Panicked, they had thrown her body into the trunk. Bruce Bunch was not identified as one of this trio. One man was named as part of this group, Joseph Falstrom. In the early 1990s, detectives brought him in for questioning. "We heard you and your brother ran her down at a party," the police told him, pressing for details. Falstrom, however, strongly denied any involvement. He said the woman's canoe story was an absolute lie, and firmly stated he had never even canoed that stretch of river. Instead, Joseph turned the tables, claiming he had heard a similar story, but one that involved Bruce Bunch, not himself. He recalled a loud keg party where Bruce, in a drunken, blubbering fit, repeatedly cried out, "I killed her! I killed Deanie Peters!" According to Joseph, Bruce went on to describe the burial site. Deanie's body, Bruce claimed, was buried on a property about 5 miles north of Lowell, where an old one-room standard schoolhouse stood. He was haunted by the chains clanging on the maypole behind the schoolhouse, where he claims to have buried her, Joseph recounted, painting a vivid picture of Bruce's tormented conscience. This account was later deemed unreliable, and ultimately, no charges were ever filed. Yet for Ken Klein Hexel, the pursuit of Deanie's truth never truly ended. Despite his official retirement from the Kent County Sheriff's Department in 1994, the case remained a burning ember in his mind, fueling his private work. He carried the unresolved mystery through the years that followed, a solitary torchbearer against the growing darkness of an unsolved crime, holding on to every frayed thread of hope, constantly reviewing the past in search of a future answer. Years passed, the unanswered questions lingering like a constant echo. Then, in 2008, a glimmer of hope emerged with the formation of the Kent County Metro Cold Case Team, a team effort among detectives from the Michigan State Police, Grand Rapids, and Kent County, launched with a big $300,000 grant. One of their first actions was to revisit old leads, including Joseph Falstrom. This time, Joseph agreed to take a polygraph test. The results confirmed his innocence, further solidifying his alibi. Joseph provided investigators with an undeniable piece of evidence, a United States Army document proving that he was training at Fort Benning, Georgia, at the exact time Deanie went missing. Police also confirmed that these Army papers officially cleared Joseph Falstrom from the list of suspects. The question of why it had taken so many years for such a clear alibi to emerge remained a frustrating loose end in the early investigation. The later investigation by the Kent County Cold Case Unit revealed a troubled life for Bruce Bunch as he grew up. Reports showed that Bruce moved to Kentucky, where he opened an auto repair shop. But his past continued to haunt him. His first wife, Beth Harmon, painted a stark picture of a violent and abusive relationship. She told of heavy drinking and terrifying blackouts during which Bruce would wake with no memory of his actions. She even described an incident where he shoved her out of a moving car, leaving her with a broken ankle. Although no criminal charges were filed for such incidents in Michigan or Kentucky, official documents showed that Beth had filed for a domestic violence protection order in 1994, describing Bruce as a loud, obnoxious, forceful person who threatened to harm her and himself. Bruce's own daughter, Janelle, admitted her father's connection to Deanie. "Yeah, he'd met her," she recalled him saying. Janelle admitted he drank heavily and could be unpleasant when drunk. "He was a very lovable guy," she reflected, even though at times he could be harsh. It was his mouth that got him in trouble. Still, she insisted her father never spoke of Deanie until a retired detective called their home looking for him. Only then did Bruce confide, "There was some girl who was missing, her body was missing, and they thought I might have something to do with it because I knew her, or I'd met her or something like that." Wanting the truth, Janelle asked him directly, "Did you have something to do with it, Dad?" She remembered his forceful denial, a final firm rejection of the accusations that had shadowed him for decades. On February 1, 2008, Bruce Bunch died of a heart attack at just 44 years old, still saying he was innocent and taking whatever secrets he held to his grave. For Detective Ken Klein Hexel, the cold facts of Bruce's life and his sudden death were just another file in a thick folder he had carried for decades. He had chased Bruce through every rumor, every lead, watching the truth slip through his fingers again and again. Klein saw Bruce as a violent, troubled man capable of terrible acts. Yet he never found the undeniable proof that could bring Deanie justice. In their renewed efforts, the cold case team also revisited the physical locations tied to the canoe story and Bruce's alleged confession. A little over a year later, on May 12, 2009, police and experts gathered at the old schoolhouse itself. The Kent County Sheriff's Office used a mechanical excavator to skim the topsoil of the area suspected of hiding Deanie's body, while the Michigan State University Department of Anthropology examined the disturbed earth for any irregularities. Yet once again, despite advanced techniques and renewed hope, The authorities appeared to find nothing of importance. The silent ground continued to guard its secrets. Watching the official cold case team carefully revisit sites he had walked decades before brought Klein Hexel a bittersweet mix of hope and frustration. He knew the limitations of the initial investigation, the leads that had gone cold, and the questions that haunted him even in retirement. While the cold case team pursued their angles, Klein Hexel, ever the solitary torchbearer, never stopped his own independent quest. He continued to look through dusty files, re-interview old contacts, and follow up on sleeping whispers, driven by the same unwavering promise he had made to Deanie's memory so long ago. It was this relentless personal dedication that, in 2010, led him down a new path. This path ended in a discovery. A woman who lived in Lowell during Deanie's disappearance, a witness who had already spoken to the cold case team, now shared her account with Klein Hexel. Her story was a chilling echo of the rumors that had plagued Bruce Bunch for decades. The woman told Klein Hexel about one unsettling night when a group of people came to her house, and among them was Bruce Bunch. Bruce seemed restless and was acting strangely, she remembered. His words clearly, Bruce admitted that he had hit a girl with his car and that she had died. Panicked, he and some others put her body into a car. He never explained who the "we" really were. According to the woman, Bruce said they drove to the end of Snow Avenue near the freeway, where there was a pile of rocks. There, they laid the girl's body on the ground and covered it with large stones. Detective Klein Hexel, thinking about this terrible tale, theorized that if the story were true, Bruce had likely moved her body after the spring thaw to another, perhaps more permanent location. The truth, in this version, was buried not once, but twice. Returning to the present, Klein Hexel leaned back in his worn office chair. The weight of all the events in Deanie Marie Peters' case that he had just reviewed, decades of effort, the shifting faces of suspicion, tempting leads, and impossible walls, pressed heavily upon him. Deanie's file remained open, a persistent ache, a haunting reminder that despite his relentless pursuit, the final answers to her disappearance still escaped him. The deep silence of his office echoed the emptiness that had swallowed her whole. Time ultimately would claim the detective himself. In 2018, Ken Klein Hexel, the first officer assigned to Deanie's case and the man who refused to let her be forgotten, passed away at the age of 77. For 37 years, he had been her most devoted advocate. He never stopped searching, never stopped believing. Yet the final pieces of Deanie's puzzle remained maddeningly out of reach during his lifetime. He carried her story to his grave, an unfulfilled promise. But the case of Deanie Peters, like a sleeping seed, would sprout new and bewildering life even after the man who had guarded it for so long was gone. On July 2, 2021, Deputy Dan Bishop arrived at the building housing Frisbee Sign Company in Ada, Michigan, owned by 61-year-old James Frisbee. James Frisbee was charged with one count of assaulting, resisting, and obstructing a police officer. But the deeper, more important charge that truly sent shockwaves through the cold case investigation was perjury, directly related to Deanie Peters' disappearance. The probable cause affidavit clearly outlined the charges. James Frisbee had made false statements while under oath according to that subpoena issued to investigate a cold case homicide. He had further made false statements to law enforcement and others about possible suspects and/or witnesses. Even more damning, he had willfully blocked and interfered with other witnesses by instructing them to not bring their phone to scheduled investigative subpoenas, an instruction that 2 witnesses followed. The implication was clear. James Frisbee was actively working to obstruct justice, and his testimony was deeply suspect. During a preliminary hearing in the Grand Rapids courtroom in August 2021, prosecutors played a tape of a 2008 interview with James in it. James had implicated 2 men he knew as potential killers of Deanie. One was Kyle Fate, who had worked at James's sign shop for a period and had been friends with him. Witnesses testified that Kyle had been Deanie's boyfriend around the time she went missing. Kyle Fate himself had died in 2008 of an accidental overdose, his secret sealed. Susan Timmer, who dated Kyle from 1999 to 2004, testified that James called her the day Kyle died and chillingly declared, "He said, yeah, I think he lived his life with drugs and alcohol because he felt guilty about killing Deanie Peters. Todd Parks, a mutual friend of James and Kyle, further testified that James had, in 2009, confided his theory that Kyle was the killer and that Deanie was buried somewhere near 68th Street and McCord's Avenue. Near Alto, Karen Canaveau, Kyle's former wife, supported the connection by testifying that she had once found a large photo of Deanie among Kyle's old pictures, and on its back, a very detailed love letter written to Kyle and signed by Deanie. The implication: Deanie's romantic connections were deeper than first understood, and James Frisby was now placing a dead man squarely in the frame. Detectives later stated that James had later lied to them, claiming he never made these accusations, a key reason for his perjury charge. In September 2021, Judge David J. Buter ruled that there was enough evidence to move James Frisby's case to circuit court for a jury trial, where he could potentially face life in prison if found guilty. The legal system, however, moves slowly. James Frisby's case remains caught in the maze of the courts, and he has never been tried or convicted of anything regarding Deanie Peters' disappearance. 44 years have stretched into a lifetime since Deanie Marie Peters vanished into the chilly Michigan evening. The Forest Hills Central Middle School, once a scene of youthful energy, then of frantic despair, has continued its rhythms, while the memory of Deanie, the spirited brunette with the big plans, remains an open wound in the heart of her family and a haunting mystery for investigators. The early mistakes, the lost diary, the shifting sands of suspicion, from the quiet janitor to the violent teenager, then to the childhood friend and the seemingly calculating businessman. Each turn of the investigation promised answers, only to deliver more questions. Her mother, Mary Peters, has endured decades of agonizing uncertainty, a mother's anguish that no passage of time can truly ease. The simple wave, the casual promise, "I'll be right back," has echoed in her memory for a lifetime. A cruel reminder of what was lost. Detective Ken Klein Hexel, a man whose career and retirement were marked by the ghost of Deanie, dedicated countless hours to finding her, ultimately leaving behind a legacy of tireless effort in an unsolved case. The scientific revolution that has brought swift and definitive answers in other cold cases, like the breakthroughs in Christina Castiglione's and Kimberly Lewisell's cases, has yet to deliver its final word for Deanie. Her body has never been found. Her final resting place, a cruel mystery. The precise events of that February evening, the true perpetrator, and the motive behind the callous act remain shrouded in the depths of Michigan's past. The Deanie Peters case stands as a stark, enduring reminder of the shadows that can persist, stubbornly unyielding, even in the brightest light of human dedication and advancing technology. It is a story of a young life suddenly ended, a family forever broken, and a community left to deal with the unnerving reality that some secrets, no matter how relentlessly pursued, continue to guard their truth in an unbroken, deafening silence. Thanks for being here and listening. Don't forget to hit the bell for our latest stories. Stay safe and take care with your loved ones.